Hey friends, day 5 of 10 days till a decade. 5 of these. Oh boy. Who knew I was going to make it to even 5? So thanks again for tuning in. We're going to cut to the chase again. And day 5 is the last of the drunkalogue. So this is when it was the end. Many people will ask when you get sober, like, how did you know? Like, when did you know? Well, I kind of always knew. I kind of always knew I didn't drink like other people. I drank a lot more than most, and once I started, I couldn't stop. So that was always in there, but like, when did I stop? So moving down to Bloomington Normal, like I said in the previous video, I thought that if I moved down there, I would get away from the city and all the people and places that made me drink, and the connections and all that stuff. But I brought me with me. I moved down there because a buddy had a room for rent. It was either that or a halfway house, and I didn't want any of that. So I moved down to Bloomington, found a job quickly at a front desk at a dirty motel, and I just continued to drink. I would pinch money out of the register. I would buy half pints of vodka and chase them down with Tall Boys of Steel Reserve because I could afford better alcohol, but how nasty it tasted was in line with how nasty I felt about myself. Like, I didn't want it to taste good. I just wanted it to do one thing. I wanted it to fuck me up. And that was the bottom line for my drinking at this point. I only hung out with people who party like I partied, and in a college town, that's a pretty easy feat. I think it was March 2012. Was it 12? I was on my way home from a local dive bar, and it was like 1 a.m. I was hammered, and I snapped a light pole in half, totaled my car. And so I just wanted it to be over, sat on the curb, and it was in front of a fire station near my house. So I just lit up a cigarette and just called the authorities, and they took me to jail. And, the cop was cool while I was in the hospital because I couldn't really walk a straight line because of the impact. He let me text my friends. And I texted my buddies, hey, if you come bail me out of jail, I'll pay for the bail and, buy you some drinks. And so the next morning, after snapping a light pole in half, my buddies came and bailed me out. I took cash out of the ATM, 20 on top, and we proceeded to drink for another 3 days straight. It was New Year's 2011. Yeah, New Year's 2011, where I was sitting in a room full of people at a party, and I remembered I just didn't want to live anymore. Like, I was surrounded by people, and I was feeling utterly alone. And I looked around, and I said to myself, I'm like, well, if I died right here, right now, no one would care. Of course, they'd be like, oh, there's a dead guy. But in the grand scheme of things, like, I had burnt it down with so many people and friends and relationships that no one would care. So I told a friend about this, and they took me to another place where we smoked, and I was crying, and I was like, I can never drink again. And so I made it my New Year's resolution not to drink. And then I started doing stand-up comedy as a means to, like, curb the drinking. So I started doing stand-up, and I was only getting high and doing drugs, and I made it a full calendar year of it being my New Year's resolution. And then I drank again on New Year's. I was only intending on drinking 6 beers, and that was it. And needless to say, those 6 lasted about an hour, and by the end of the night, I was drinking vodka and doing cocaine in someone's kitchen in Aurora, Illinois. And then it went downhill real quickly. It was like, I stayed away from alcohol for a calendar year, and I thought I couldn't be an alcoholic. And then I put alcohol in me again, and I lost everything in 3 months. And I was back to that place where I didn't want to live anymore. And so I called up my folks, and they said, look, we're not telling you have to get help, but it's the cheapest possible way for you to get help. So I waited up until, because my insurance was going to run out at 26. So I waited up until April 22nd of 2012, because my birthday was May 27th, and I figured the rehab would probably want to keep me a little bit longer than 30 days, so I gave myself a gap. Had one last hurrah with my friends and neighbors, and told anybody, if anybody asked where I was, just tell them I went to space camp. So I gave up. I turned myself into the rehab, and I remember walking through those doors. I was crying. I was 6'3". I weighed maybe 140 pounds, and I was crying when I walked through those doors because I just couldn't take it anymore. And I thought maybe if I go in here, they might be able to help me. And I felt this sense of relief wash over me that I was safe in there. And so I started developing ideas on how to stay sober and reaching out to sober people and getting a group of people who worked sobriety into their lives. I was emaciated. My ribs were showing, and I was done. And I believe the real answer to how did you know you were done is just, bottom isn't losing things or people or money. It's when you feel it in your soul that you just can't keep doing the same shit over and over again. So I did 23 days in rehab, got a sponsor, and started doing what they told me to do. And that was my first year of recovery. Started April 23rd of 2012. So the next 5 videos are just going to be recovery stories, because not everything was peachy keen as soon as I got sober. But when I first came around the sober crew, they didn't promise me it was going to get better right away, but they promised me different. And between wanting to kill myself and different, I chose different. So that's it for day 5, everybody, of 10 days till a decade. Thanks for listening.